event. So just want to make everyone aware of that. But we want to welcome everyone to the event this evening. And really, this is a partnership. This is one of many outreach partnerships with the Democratic clubs in the North Texas area. And so I wanted to start out by just saying welcome to anyone who is attending this evening. But I also want to give a quick shout out to our president of Women Organizing Women. And Sarah, I know that you are very familiar with all of the other clubs out there. So if you can maybe rattle out who those clubs are and maybe ask them to put their information in the chat, I will let you do that here right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the clubs that I am very familiar with, actually, and where I got my start here in North Texas is Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And they're actually having their advocacy week this week. So that kind of dovetails nicely into the legislative discussions that we're having today. I'll go ahead and put their info in the chat. And then, yes, we also have some amazing local clubs for Democrats. There's the Tarrant County Democrats, there is the Denton County Democrats and Denton Together, and in Collin County, there's many specific ones. Frisco Dems actually covers both Denton and Collin, since they kind of are on both sides of the fence there. But yeah, we've got Plano area Democrats, we've got Anna Melissa area Democrats, Collin County Young Democrats, and Richardson area Democrats, and I know I'm forgetting some. So yes, please put anything that you can in the chat for these groups. But yeah, there are so many wonderful and amazing local Democratic groups, including Plano area Democrats. So yes, please get in touch with these local groups, whether you're in Tarrant, Dallas, Denton, or Collin counties. But yes, it is amazing. You are not alone. There are many that share your values, and we are very excited to all come together for this legislative session, because there's a lot of bad bills and a lot at stake.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Awesome. Well, again, welcome to everyone. And this will be a recorded event, and we have a lot to get to. So we're going to jump right in right now. So my name is Sheena King, and I want to introduce, first of all, our moderator for this evening, Ramona Gray. Ramona, I'm going to read her bio for you guys because it's so much information. So bear with me. Ramona is a social activist, and she is deputy registrar for voting. She has served as an election judge at the polls. She's helped with phone banking during the election. She's passionate about voting and helping others to understand the power of the vote and how to communicate with the elected officials to hold them accountable while in office, which is so important. She believes to vote intentionally, we must be aware of what is happening in our communities, what is happening in the local government and the state level, and of course, federal. Being a good citizen is being informed and being aware. And we have to do that through forums such as providing good information and training. She is a 20-year U.S. Navy veteran. She relocated to Texas after serving, and she's a native of New Orleans, Louisiana. She's lived in Texas long enough to earn her boots and her spurs. So without further ado, I want to introduce our moderator for this evening, Ramona Gray.
Thank you, Sheena. I appreciate that. And good evening, everyone, and welcome again. And thank you for taking time out of your evening to attend this event so that we can share information, and hopefully that you will share with others. I'm going to introduce or share with you some information about Sheena King. So you know, Sheena is the co-chair of the Legislative Committee for Women Organizing Women Democrats. Sheena King joined WOW Dems in 2020. She is a mid-manager and has been a servant leader for over 20 years in the insurance and financial services industry. Sheena has been a community advocate, serving in various election roles for many years. She is a fierce champion for positive steps to ending bullying locally in our schools. So let's just welcome and thank Sheena for taking the lead and starting us off this evening. Before we go into introducing our guest speaker for this evening, I'd like to just for a moment take an opportunity to cover what our purpose and intent is for this meeting. We only have an hour, and so there's absolutely not enough time for us to cover everything that we would like to cover. So it is informational. And then at the end of the meeting, once our guest speaker shares, there'll be dates for other information meetings that you can attend, and there'll be other opportunities. The purpose of the meeting is to inform you, our participants, about redistricting, gerrymandering in the state of Texas. We also want to establish a common language so that when we're referencing the terminology, to ensure that we're communicating well with others, and providing accurate information. The meeting is also a call to action, because when we do find out what it is our next steps are, we're going to need support to get those things done. Background about redistricting and gerrymandering. Our electoral system is founded on the principle that every American has the right to equal representation and is guaranteed the freedom to choose their own elected officials. Redistricting in the United States is the process of drawing electoral district boundaries, a congressional act enacted in 1967. It's 54 years old this year. Redistricting boundaries are established every 10 years after a new census. Because states create districts, they must decide how district lines will be drawn. In many states, the state legislature draws the districts and openly does so in order to influence the likely partisan makeup of the legislature, discourage electoral competition, hurt political enemies, and help friends. Basically, manipulation of the redistricting process. The census is linked to redistricting. We said that redistricting boundaries are established every 10 years. The census is a process of surveying the United States population using mail surveys, in-person visits to homes mandated by the United States Constitution and done every 10 years. By the federal government, its results are used for reapportioning House seats among the states and redistricting districts within the states. Gerrymandering is drawing a district with boundaries that favor one or more groups of voters and or some candidates over others. There's partisan gerrymandering, drawing a district to favor one political party over another, and there's racial gerrymandering, drawing a district to favor one racial group over another. That's just to give you a just quick snapshot of what we're going to talk about this evening. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker this evening, and I'm going to pull up her bio. Give me just a second. Okay. I'd like to welcome Genevieve Van Cleef. She is the State Director for All on the Line. All on the Line is dedicated to creating a broad coalition to end partisan gerrymandering in Texas and return the power where it should rightly be, in the hands of the people. All on the Line is an affiliate of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, chaired by the 82nd Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder. Genevieve Van Cleef served as both the deputy and statewide political director for Annie's List. Annie's List is dedicated to recruiting, training, and supporting women candidates, staff, and political consultants. Since 2003, Annie's List has helped elect 30 women to office. Annie's List has trained thousands of women to both run for office or work as trained political professionals. Annie's List record of success electing progressive women in Texas has garnered the organization's national respect and attention. Prior to the position at Annie's List, she served as the campaign manager for the Honorable Diane Maldonado in 2008. Was the first Latina ever elected in Williamson County, Texas. The campaign won by less than 900 votes. In preparation for the 2008 cycle, she attended the Emily's List congressional campaign training and was a member of the winning campaign management team for the fall class 2008. She served as a policy fellow in NARL Pro-Choice Texas 2007. And finally, there's still more. Genevieve is a professional spoken word artist. She represented Austin, Texas at the National Poetry Slam an unprecedented 6 times. She was also the first woman to ever win the Austin Poetry Grand Slam. How amazing, awesome. Van Cleef has toured in both Europe and the United States, performing in cafes, bars, theaters, and universities. She has been published in the following anthologies: Poetry Slam, The Competitive Art of Performance Poetry, and editor Gary Blasner. The Spoken Word Revolution Redux, Mark Elevet. World Warriors, 35 Women Leaders in the Spoken Word Revolution. Editor Alex Olson. Van Cleef has also released a CD entitled Lady Business. She is absolutely the boss. Genevieve is a published writer, professional speaker. She lives with her husband, Peter Ravalli, and 4 cats in Austin, Texas. Please let's welcome Genevieve Van Cleef. And I would like to say, I have attended several of her trainings on redistricting, and she applauded the participants for attending on a Saturday morning. But I'd like to say I applauded her for presenting on a Saturday morning. And the information was excellent. And I'm sure that we will all benefit from hearing what she has to share with us tonight, and then preparing to attend other training sessions with Genevieve. So thank you. Let's give her a round of applause and welcome.
Thank you, guys. Man, when you said send the long bio, I thought you were day 12, I was born. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. And look, I've known about this group for some time, having done all that work at Annie's List. I am so excited that there are so many strong political women in North Texas. Not only because you should all be running for office and taking over up there, but also because you're ground zero for redistricting this time. All of the good news in North Texas about folks that have made races competitive and then gone on to win those races, your area is absolutely going to be really paid close attention to in this redistricting process. So the fact that you're asking us to be here so early before the process even gets started, we've got a lot of work to do up there, and I would like to be a resource for you all. And also my new colleague Bafour is joining us tonight. There's Bafour, well, you can see him on his screen. It's his 2nd week or maybe his 3rd week working for us. So this is like the millionth time I've already asked him to work at night and on the weekend. Thank you for not quitting already, Bafour. I really appreciate that. But he lives in Frisco. So once we can actually meet in person again, you're gonna have an organizer, a digital organizer on the ground to be of assistance to you. Because time is short, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and get started with this presentation. And while I'm presenting, I won't be able to see the chat, so I'll make sure and stop for questions.
We'll manage that for you.
Okay. I always, I don't want people to think I'm being rude or ignoring them. It's hard to see two things at once. All right, let's share the screen and get going. Present. There we go. Okay. WOW meeting, February 25th. Let's do this. All right. I thought for some of you have done some redistricting work already, but I thought it might be good to start with a really quick explainer video. I think this does a pretty good job at explaining the various levels of why this is a problem and connecting it to issues that we all care about. So if you would indulge me, I'm going to go ahead and start this.
Our founding fathers established a revolutionary political system, a system of the people, by the people, and for the people, a system that would respond to the will of the nation, enact real change, and move our country forward. But something has happened. Our political system is broken. Our government is less responsive. Change has slowed down, and sometimes change doesn't occur at all. Too often our system, which was designed to represent the people, favors the powerful instead. This is why we don't see real action on so many issues that people care about, like reducing gun violence, expanding access to healthcare, or dealing with the urgent threat of climate change. What happened? For one thing, politicians started picking their voters instead of the other way around. This happened because in 2010 and 2011, a group of Republicans, backed by dark money, invested heavily to gain control of state legislatures, to gerrymander like never before, and to manipulate maps for the next decade. Gerrymandering is the practice of manipulating electoral district lines to lock in victory for one political party, regardless of what the voters want. This makes it difficult for people to vote politicians out of power. Instead of serving their voters, these career politicians serve lobbies, special interest groups, and the extremes of their party. This is not democracy. So how can we fix this broken system? We established the National Democratic Redistricting Committee with one goal in mind: achieving fair maps. Now we're executing a four-pronged strategy to restore our democracy. First, we're investing in races that are crucial for redistricting. This includes many down-ballot races that sometimes don't get much publicity, but are key to making democracy work for everyone. Second, we're supporting redistricting reforms across the nation. In 2018, voters in 5 states passed reform measures to make redistricting fairer. Now there are 18 states that engage redistricting commissions to draw their maps, which is the best way to improve the redistricting process. Third, we're taking legal action. We're working alongside our affiliates to overturn gerrymandered maps and to protect your voting rights. Fourth, we're building a massive grassroots campaign to prepare for redistricting battles ahead, because Republicans will fight hard to protect their manipulated system. We have a plan. We are ready, but we need just one more thing: you. We need you to join us on the front lines of this fight for our democracy. We are at a defining moment for our nation. Electoral district lines will be redrawn across the United States in 2021, and we cannot allow politicians to manipulate the maps again. This is our once-in-a-decade chance to get it right. In order to make progress on the issues that affect our day-to-day lives, we have to end gerrymandering. We must stop politicians from picking their own voters and restore fairness to our democracy once again. Only by working together can we set our country back on the right track and fix our broken system. It's time we take back control of our democracy. Join us. Our founding fathers established a...
Stop. Okay, so that's our affiliate, the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. That was our chairman, Eric Holder. And for the electoral part of the redistricting process is over. And just so as you know, the National Democratic Redistricting Committee gave over $1.3 million to flip the Texas House in 2020. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to work for this organization. So many national organizations come into Texas, but they don't stay. And they started investing money in the state in 2018 when we flipped 12 seats. So as a longtime Texas political person, I knew that they were serious about the job. And then the other things he alluded to, we have another affiliate, the National Redistricting Foundation. They carry out lawsuits, and some of the work you might have heard of theirs about is they were very critical in the case to remove the citizenship question from the census last year. And so who I am, my part of the pie is that we are all on the line. So I am the organizing arm. Before and I are the organizing arm of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee in Texas. So I'm the C4 part, right? I can wear a lot of hats, but organizing is the name of my game. So let's get started. All right, the problem that the video so eloquently outlines is that we have a system where our public officials are not accountable. And if you survived last week in this state, which not everybody did, we know that these folks are in need of some accountability. And many of them, frankly, who voted for some of the stuff that got us to where we are with this winter storm, voted against in 2011 the bills that were, and I can send you a copy of the bills, but Sylvester Turner, who's now the mayor of Houston, brought one up on national news. He's like, dust off the copy of my bill that you wouldn't give a hearing to. So we need to hold these people accountable, and it's never been more true than it is right now. So it's hard to vote people out when the odds are stacked against you, when the district is drawn not to represent the people that live there, but is represented to, say, dilute the voting power of the African American or Hispanic or Asian communities, when it's drawn in such a way as to make it non-competitive. And look, let me be clear, Democrats and Republicans, when left to their own devices, gerrymander. Okay, and we'll get to that in a minute, but the thing that you should know about the 2020 elections is we did remarkably well, considering that we are in a state that has high levels of voter suppression. It is not easy to register to vote here. It is not easy to cast your ballot. And because the Voting Rights Act has been gutted, they're trying not to count votes that have already been cast at this point. There were several lawsuits that did that came from right-wing groups. So nobody should hold their heads low about 2020 and that we didn't get to where we all thought we were going to get to. I feel like we should level set. You are up against a rigged system. So if your expectation is to do a couple of phone banks and have a glass of wine and have that rigged system not work, you're going to be disappointed. You have been disappointed. Well, let me tell you, this redistricting stuff and voter suppression, these are the fundamentals of democracy, right? You can't win a basketball game if you don't have solid fundamentals. Democracy is the same way. If you make the system rigged so that people can't fire electeds or hold them accountable, then people stop participating. And so often when you hear the narrative, well, this group of people or these group of people don't vote, let's level set there. If you're not giving them anything to vote for and you're making it hard to vote, then hey, you get the system that you pay for, and ours is pretty paid for. All right, so here's some facts. They're not really fun, but facts about redistricting. Texas has been found in violation of the 1965 Voting Rights Act every decade since it was enacted. That means not one map has been passed by the Texas legislature that didn't racially gerrymander, frankly. And Democrats were in control of the state until 2003. And the same people that get the short end of the stick from the people in charge now got the short end of the stick from the people in charge then. So we have to hold all people accountable. It doesn't mean we don't have our preferences. And to be frank with you, since I am a C4, I will tell you that there's only one party that's been in charge of the state since 2003 totally that has done what they have done, and that's the Republican Party, right? And they're in charge right now. And so I would expect to see maps that favor their candidates. And look, they're telling us they're doing it. Alan West, the head of the Republican Party, said, don't worry about fairness, we're in charge now. The courts, without going all the way in the rabbit hole, the Supreme Court ruled that federal courts will not consider partisan gerrymandering claims anymore, but they will still consider racial gerrymandering claims. And so communities of interest, you're going to hear the word communities of interest a lot. And we're going to talk about what that is, and we're going to talk about how to define it and why you need to know about it here in a minute. Frankly, the current gerrymandered maps, the maps we just ran this election on, go back to 2003 when Tom DeLay, Tom Craddock, and Karl Rove drew those maps. They're durable. They're durable. There's a reason that we had all these great candidates that were fully funded for the first time in my life. And, you know, we got close. We were within 11,000 votes of taking over the Texas House. Never forget that. We didn't lose by a lot. We lost by a few. So that's incredible. What that tells me is that gerrymandered map has withstood two really big elections, which is 2008, 2018, and 2020. High voter turnout did not change who's in charge of this state. All right. So the next thing I want to talk to you about, and this is an action item and gives you a flavor of what redistricting in Texas is like. The State Senate Redistricting Committee decided to have hearings. They gave people about 3 days notice. They sent out a press release. Very few of you have heard about it or saw it covered on your local news. You didn't hear your representatives talking to you about it. You didn't hear Congress people talking to you about it. So the Senate decides to have these hearings. And to be totally honest, it's a litigation strategy. They're opening up the process to people so they can tell a judge down the line that they opened the process up to people. But we're testifying without having census data back or without having any maps to testify about. So it's a little bit of political theater, but since they invited us to the theater, we're going to make sure we play our part and do it better and in greater numbers than they expected. So these hearings were supposed to actually wrap up last week, but obviously the storm canceled everybody's plans. And so there are they've rescheduled 2 hearings, and I'll move on here. And in fact, I'll go back to why you should submit public comment in a minute. I want to talk about, there's 2 hearings left. Friday, March 12th at 10 a.m. Saturday, March 13th at 9 a.m. And you need those registration links, and don't worry about writing those registration links down. I'm going to send them in an email to Sheena and Ramona after this is over with some other materials, and you will all get them. You can also find them on the Texas Legislative website. If you look up the special committee, Senate Committee on Redistricting, they will have those hearings for you. You have to register to go to them. You will testify virtually. Okay? Now I'm going to go back and tell you why. So we don't have maps. We don't have census data. Why am I asking you to do this? I'm asking you to do this because they have a litigation strategy which says they have to appear to be open and care about what the public says. We need to make sure the public record is full of public comment, and not just, hey, you guys should follow the law, although that should be a part of it, but also you are the best people to tell the story of your community. You don't want some paid political person doing that for you. You know, you are in the best position to explain where you live, how close you are to a hospital, to your church, to your grocery store. Are the roads good? And we're going to go through how to build testimony here in a minute, but you know what's fair for your community, and I don't. So there's no point in me going and talking to that committee on behalf of the WOW women of Collin County. It's really yours to do. They do not make it easy. I want to be real clear. If this process looks like there's a bunch of hoops that you have to jump through, it's because there's a bunch of hoops that you have to jump through. And the reason there are is, redistricting comes down to this. Every 10 years, it's where all the money and the power is distributed. And if there's a lot of money and power involved, no matter who's in charge, are you surprised that it's hard for the public to access that process? So let me just say, we're going to figure it out together. And if you can't make this one for whatever reason, there's going to be more opportunities for you to tell the people in charge where you live, why it's important, and why you don't want to be gerrymandered. So that's my pitch about why to do it. So communities of interest are basically, it's kind of a funny legal term. And one of the resources I'm going to send to y'all after this is over is, I was so glad Ramona took some time to explain some redistricting terms. It's just like every other profession. Everybody has their own way of talking. There's acronyms, like, you sound really smart when you know all the acronyms. Like if I was talking to an engineer, I would have to say, look, I don't know what you're talking about. You have to change you have to tell me what's up. So I'm going to send that glossary to you. So if there's a term or whatever that doesn't quite make sense to you, or I don't spend a lot of time talking about, there's more to know, and you're going to get those resources. And if those resources aren't enough, then you can contact me or Ramona or Sheena, or I will find the right resource for you. So communities of interest are a way to explain essentially where you live, who you are, and the fabric of your community. So when it comes to redistricting, communities of interest could absolutely be, you live in an area that has grown tremendously in the last 10 years, and you've had a lot of people move into the area, or a lot of people start their families there that are Hispanic or African American or Asian. And you believe that they should have representation that represents them, and not another group that doesn't particularly spend time with them, right? So if you have a huge population of, say, I don't know, any number of people, they deserve to be represented. They deserve to be able to choose their own representative. And a lot of times these lines are drawn to make sure that can't happen. And particularly in areas with a lot of growth in the Hispanic and African American community, what they will often do is either split your community apart, so that, here's a good example. Prairie View College down south outside of Houston, it's literally split in half. One side of the college is in one state house district. The other side of the college, literally, is in another district. That is a historically Black college. So what are they doing? They're diluting the power of the people that live there. I live in Travis County. We have 6 members of Congress that touch Austin. We have 1 Democratic member of Congress. That's called cracking. They're cracking us apart. What do you know about Travis County? Well, we're a bunch of, Democratic hippies, right? We voted 70% for Biden. But we have no representation really in Congress. And 3 of our members of Congress in this area, including my own Congressman Roger Williams, who, by the way, lives in Weatherford outside of Fort Worth, didn't vote to certify the 2020 election. He's my congressman. I live in an incredibly blue area of town. My next door neighbor is Cheryl Cole. She's an African-American state representative. We live in a blue part of town, but that is my congressman. So when I'm talking to you about how to explain your community, I want you to really think about it. But it's not all bad news, right? I think the best testimony and the best descriptors of your community are not just the challenges you face, but also the things that make you really proud. Has your community grown a lot? Have you added new schools and new parks and new features and new buildings and new churches and attractions? Is there a celebration that anchors your community? Is there a thriving economy? Is there job creation for everybody or for just part of the community? So that's what I'm talking about, this communities of interest stuff. Did you wait in long lines to vote? Is your school in your neighborhood as good as the school in the neighborhood next to you? Is there a good library in your neighborhood versus the neighborhood next to you? Is there a pool and a park in your neighborhood? Does the brush get picked up on time? Does the road get fixed? Do the lights work? You would be amazed about, once you start thinking about different aspects of your community, environmental concerns. Let me tell you, I think some very powerful testimony from your area. You guys have cement plants up there. Maybe not right where you are, but there's cement plants in North Texas. And there are also high rates of asthma in children. Do you live close to a cement plant? Is your vaccination supply the same as in other parts of where you live? Are COVID outcomes the same as other places in Texas? What I would suggest is that any place there's been really terrible COVID outcomes, you can almost guarantee that you live in a gerrymandered district, because you're not going to have as many hospitals, you're not going to have as many doctors, you're not going to have as many insured people, and you're not going to have as many sites giving injections. Is there a lot of food? Has the food bank gotten really busy in your area? You see what I'm saying? There are lots of ways for you to apply the issues that you care about, or you may even advocate about or work in, to a talk about redistricting. So some of this we just went over. I don't want to belabor the point. But the one point I do want to point out on this slide is what do you expect from redistricting? So you've spent some time talking about who you are, where you live, what are the features of your area. The next thing I want you to think about is what you want from this process. You may not know anything about redistricting, but you sure as heck want representatives that are going to tell you when the meeting is, what methodology they're using to draw these maps. You want access to testify, whether that's virtual, which we may not have in the House. We do have in the Senate, but the House gets to decide its own rules. You want them to follow the Voting Rights Act. You want them not to dilute the votes of people of color. You want them not to use partisan data. Can you imagine if Democrats and Republicans had to fight for every vote? A whole bunch of stuff would get done really fast. Let me tell you. So you can say what you want from this process. And don't forget, I'm going to give you a one-pager with all of this on it. So you don't need to remember everything. We're good. You'll get it. So I'm going to quickly go through some of this. And this is really what the one-pager is about. Because if you've never testified in front of a committee, and by the way, I have a link, you can submit written testimony as well. So if you're not comfortable jumping through the hoops of virtual testimony, there is a way for you to write down what you want from this process and submit it to them. I would argue that you probably should also send that to your local representative and everyone on the committee to make sure it gets received. They say they're going to put it in the record, but let's just make sure they do. And if you want to send me a copy of it, that'd be great too. So the first thing you always do in any sort of testimony situation, whether it's virtual or in person, is you thank them, right? It's a formal thing. You thank them, and remember, you're going to be on a video screen, so they're going to see your background. They're going to see you from the waist up. So make sure what would you wear if you were going to the Capitol, right? I would use the same. I mean, there's no dress code, but just me personally, If I was going to go talk to a committee, although I'm breaking my own rules, I testified in front of a committee in 2013 with a t-shirt at 4 a.m. because we were talking about women's access to healthcare, but that's a different story. So at least virtually, when you can control your environment, make sure you pay attention to it. So you want to thank the chairman or the chairwoman and the committee members. My name is, and then they're going to ask you whether you're here to represent yourself or represent a group. The only thing I'll tell you, I'm not going to tell you that there's a better way to do this. I think representing yourself there's nothing more powerful than that. But if you guys decided as a group that you wanted a bunch of WOW members to testify, you could, and people certainly have. We are the Women Organizing Women, group from this area, and that's who I represent. That's fine, and that's really powerful. For example, the ladies from Katy, man, those Texans Against Gerrymandering ladies in Katy, if they don't get their own congressional district, nothing is fair, because every lady from Katy has been like, we want this. We live between 13 different districts. We want our own district. We're the ladies from Katy. You're like, ladies, we hear you. So, you can tease it out, but ultimately it's your testimony, you choose. So describe your district and community, right? I live in blank area of Dallas. My neighborhood is close to a school. All the stuff we just talked about. Most kids speak English and Spanish. Grown a lot in the last 10 years. That's how, this is an example taken from no one. It doesn't, this isn't real testimony, but I tried to think of ways to explain what a community could possibly be like. Living, and I also tried to think of areas that I thought were going to get new congressional seats, and your area of Texas is likely to get a new congressional seat. Step 3, why is this harmful for you, right? So who you are, a little bit about where you live, and then what is this, why is this a problem? Well, you may care about gun violence. I heard there was a Moms Demand person on here, right? There's nothing wrong with tying this testimony to issues that you personally advocate on. In fact, I would say that it's a really, really good idea. If repro rights is your thing, immigration rights, it does not matter. Whatever is important to you goes in here. No one has been harmed more by map manipulation and voter suppression than Black and Latinos communities who have been minimized in the ballot box and in Congress. That's true, especially in Texas. I worry that we're divided as a country. One of the terrible things that gerrymandering does is it makes districts safe, right? So, there's so many seats in the Texas legislature that just aren't competitive. And some of that is because, people sort of self-select into areas that are one way or the other with people that they like or whatever. But a lot of times, there's some real dingers that have been elected from both parties and you can't get rid of them because, and it also means the real edges of both parties show up. And if the only people you have to care about is a primary audience or primary voters, then you are going to spend a lot of time catering to a group of people that are in the minority of the general public. Hence, bathroom bills, special sessions on which bathroom a child can pee in, all of this, the Star-Spangled Banner. We're worried that there's not going to be enough singing and praying at sporting events, whatever. But that's what you get, right? These really wingnut ideas. And we've got our own wingnuts, and I'm sure you have your own stories. What do you want from your elected leaders? You got to tell them how they're going to solve it for you, right? You need to direct them. You want these maps to be fair, competitive, and to represent all Texans. You want them to stop worrying so much about a particular party and start paying attention to the Voting Rights Act. This is where you would say that. And look, if in the written testimony, you only have 3 minutes when you talk to so you really need to prepare. and think about what you want to say. And I would not wing it. I would write it down because A, it's recorded, B, a judge may look at it later, and C, you want to put your best foot forward. And unless you're just an amazing speaker, I get nervous talking to y'all. I'm really going to be nervous talking to a bunch of senators who may not even be paying attention to me. They may be looking at their phones and they don't want to hear one more person, right? So it's jarring. It's a jarring experience. So be prepared. All right, so that's kind of it about why you should do it and how you should do it. And remember, I'm going to send you the information afterwards that you need to either write your testimony or think about doing it virtually on the 2 days that we spoke about on the 12th and 13th of March. That's a Friday and a Saturday. They've broken up, originally they broke up the schedule by regions, meaning like Saturdays for San Antonio. But don't worry about that. The committee has decided that it doesn't matter where you're from. So even if one of those dates is for a particular area, if you register to testify, and you need to do that 24 hours before the meeting, at least, know that they're not going to dock you or ask you why you're here if you're there to talk about North Texas and the meeting is about another part of the state. Don't worry about that. So I know this group cares about action, right? And that's one big action item that you can take. But this is a long road. Ramona has run at least 2 marathons. Well, this is going to be her 3rd because this is not a sprint. Redistricting is not a sprint. So you can't do everything by yourself, but if you can take the next right step and find a group of folks that you like working with, a little goes a long way. So what can we do, right? Because we're up against it. So I started thinking about that, and I thought about it a long time, knowing that me and before, like I'm one half of a 2-man army. And so I can't, there's 29 million people in this state that need to know about redistricting. And so I need to make sure that I'm getting the word out and I'm giving the tools. And then I'm hoping that enough folks are interested to pick up those tools and make them their own. I will never tell you what fairness is. That's up for you to decide. I'm just here to help you build relationships with electeds. If you've never done it, I'm happy to teach you to do it, right? And then you're going to go on and do it yourself. Report out to your community. You've heard nothing about these Senate hearings from your local news. From you may, if you get the paper, I get 3 papers in Texas, but it's my job, right? If you don't regularly read the paper, if you're not regularly looking at the Texas Tribune or the Texas Observer or whatever, listening to the Texas Standard at 10 a.m. On your local public radio station, you probably haven't heard much about redistricting. And if you haven't, and you guys are the most organized people and most like turned on people in your area, your neighbors and friends have certainly not heard about it. And so, you know, hey, we got to report out to our communities, and we got to teach our communities about this issue in our own words. So I'm going to teach you how to do that, not tonight, but you're going to take that information and then you're going to make it make sense to the people that you know, right? So none of this matters if it sounds exactly like me. It needs to sound like you. It needs to be accurate information, and then it needs to sound like you. And then, you know, we've got some advocacy tools that we're going to make sure you know how to use and give to you so you can use them. And this Senate testimony is one thing, but we have a variety of different tools, like a letter to the editor tool. We did a bunch of texting in 2020. We did a bunch of calls. We have a call out tool. You know, all of these things we want to introduce to you as you sort of group yourselves together. And some of you really like to be on social media. So you're going to be in charge of getting the word out on social media. And some of you really like maps, and we're going to have a mapping training in March. And so you're going to want to be the person that's in charge of maps. And somebody else is going to have time and interest in tracking bills. There's a transparency bill that Jessica Gonzalez is going to file shortly. That's about this process and ensuring there's transparency in the redistricting process. There's some other bills that we can talk about on another day that you may be interested in tracking, but because we can't leave our houses and COVID is such a thing, we're going to have to learn to use the state legislative website, which is the worst website in the entire world. It is not easy to use. It is not intuitive. And so you're going to have some, nerd like me that spends a lot of time on that website teaching you how to do it. But it's just like everything else, right? It's just a new thing that if you've had a career, raised a family, balanced your family budget, helped raise children, help your parents, ladies, y'all can do this. So you just got to find the part that makes the most sense to you and your interests and the time that you have to offer. And also, we got to get ready for all of this to be in person at some point. And so there's a lot to do, and we can't just do it all at once and start tomorrow and it's all going to be perfect, but we have the time. I've got the tools, right? Remember that Willie Nelson song, if you've got the money, honey, I've got the time. Well, this is that kind of situation, right? And we're going to start to, work together to figure out scheduling, and we're going to meet, twice a month here and once a month there. All of that is yet to be done, and I'm looking to you to help us do it. But we have time, it can be done, and there's stuff to do every day or every month, depending on what you can do. I don't want anybody burning out, because we're in for the long haul. So how are we going to support you? I just asked you to do a bunch of work. Well, what am I going to do to support you in that work? And what is Before going to do? First of all, we're going to have monthly statewide calls with either a training or a speaker that's related to the subject. Now, if you were on the monthly call that we just had this week, you know that it wasn't a lot about redistricting. It was a lot about what happened during that storm and getting people the resources they need for the storm. I felt like it would be inappropriate to not acknowledge that so many were still suffering. And, I don't know. I almost canceled it, but I didn't want to, because we had a lot of people show up. But anyway, unless there's another natural disaster, and I hate to even say that out loud, I keep thinking in my head, what's it going to be next? Locust? And it probably will be. So set all that crazy stuff aside. Before or I will be assigned to you in some way to get the tools to you and to help you start to organize your group. And then look, we can help you with accountability events once we can have either virtual or in person when we start to do that. And I try always to make sure that there are speakers as part of the program somewhere. So if I can help you get a speaker, I know a lot of folks have been doing this a long time, but particularly, look, there's going to be people that want to talk to you about this, whether it's the League of Women Voters, who does a lot of the same organizing we do, but it's C3, it's nonpartisan. So it's a little bit different, right? But there's so much needed in the space. This is like the Katy Freeway, ladies, right? Like it takes all 10 lanes to get in and out of Houston. So, if there's a particular representative, like your own representative, that you want a staff member or them to come talk to you, we can work together to see if we can't find some interesting speakers along the way. There's a couple of really neat folks that I've just learned about. One is a national person for the NAACP who has a free tool that they're going to offer to help people talk about communities of interest. I just learned about it today. There's people that are doing mapping trainings on all this free software. But, don't get overwhelmed. These are all things that we can do together. You can choose or not choose to do them. So I know I said I would end a little earlier, but my entire life story was actually laid out a little earlier. You can all come to Thanksgiving. We eat at 1. I feel like y'all know me now. Sheena said, make your links shorter. And so I tried to honor her request. If you want to find out more and stay in touch with us, right? Look, Sheena and Ramona, there's a couple of you have my number. So like, I'm not going anywhere. But for those of you that don't already have my phone number, you can sign a redistricting pledge and you'll get hooked into our, ladder of engagement is what they call it. Our Mobilize, I know you guys use Mobilize, and actually in a different meeting, we should talk about how we can boost each other's stuff on Mobilize, because I believe we can do that. And also it helps us track participation. So this is a unique opportunity for our 2 groups because we both use Mobilize. But so you kind of get how it works, but it's all on the line Texas, and you can see everything coming up in our world. We have a petition intake form up about the accountability teams. And many of you, well, I know a couple of you have definitely already filled it out, but that's, if you're interested in working on accountability teams, it'd be great to sign up the intake, because before is going to take all that data and start breaking people up into regions. And then follow us on social. Oh, you can also give us money. Sheena told me if I didn't say that, she was going to say it. So I won't make her say it. You can go to allontheline.org and they have a donate button, and it works. I know, because my mother donated money and told me that was my birthday present, which was pretty dang cool. That she invested in me. So, all right. So follow us on social media. Twitter is allontheline_Texas. Facebook, all on the line, Texas. And my personal Twitter account, I'll tell you why, because a lot of the all on the line stuff, I'll place it in my account first, but also I'm a little saltier than the official account. So I try and keep up with things like those hearings that were going on today. Now I've talked too much, so I'm going to stop sharing and start answering questions.
Jen, I have a question. This is a lot of information, and there's quite a few things that we can do to get started. That's good for us, but how do we get people in the community engaged, and those communities that are communities of interest,
Yep.
that really should speak to some of what their concerns are? How can we help to get
I think some of what you do,
involvement?
right? Like, I mean, we've got the fancy stuff, like we can do Facebook ads and that's all great. But really, if you're trying to get in community, number one, the relationships you already have are better than some list that I have, on Van. If you already, there's a ton of ways to do sort of really local, meaning like if you want to do something in and or around your home, not like house parties are kind of funny, particularly in COVID, but if
Right.
like I do stuff at HEB because they have an outdoor cafe. Not that I've done anything in person in a while, but hey, me and a few of my folks are going to be at the cafe and the HEB in Mueller, which is not far from my house in Austin. And I like doing stuff. I've had quote unquote house parties in the back of a Denny's. Go where they send you. There are a list of civic organizations in your area. Some of you probably already know and work with them. I think HOAs are another place that if you live in the burbs, HOAs are a big deal. Neighborhood associations, and we can change a presentation to be very nonpartisan, just to give the information about the process and then follow up with the people and the people come. There's a variety of ways we can do that. As long as we can settle on a small group where you are and sort of get ourselves organized, then we go out, right? It's spokes of a wheel. So you're the hub where you are, and then we go look for spokes of the wheel. The other thing is there are other organizations that are working on this. Are there Planned Parenthood members in your area? Is there a university in your area? Are there senior centers that are looking for content and programming? And again, that would be nonpartisan. I'm not trying to
Right.
sell anybody anything, and I wouldn't suggest that you do either, right? We have to use our judgment there, but there's plenty of people that need to hear about this fundamental governmental process. Also, your area has grown so much, there's millions of new Texans, and they don't know a thing about how Texas
Right.
government
That's
works.
the point.
And so, we're going to have to get a little creative after we all melt from the storm and everything gets fixed, and are there faith leaders that you have relationships with already that you could be, that you could approach? Is there, we also, is there a Girl Scout troop that you can earn a good citizenship badge? I mean, I can go on and on. There's a variety. The sky's the limit. If you can think of it, we can figure out a way to do it. And as long as we get a small group kind of us that are sort of regularly talking and meeting, then I think we're like, okay, we're going to have an event at the library, and we're going to focus on these 3 neighborhoods, getting people there. And a way that I can support you is try and put email into that area, right? Or try and is there a list that you could get a hold of through your own resources? Do some of you have access to the van or other lists of people that we could start to target different parts of your communities? So sky's the limit, one step at a time, but we can do that. The other thing is, look, y'all are the best content providers for public radio, African-American radio, Spanish-speaking radio, Hindi and Urdu radio. I know they have a ton of it in Houston. I don't know about the area you live in, but there's no reason in the world that we can't use our own diversity to talk to the people that we're in community with.
Right.
So, and I can help craft, and we can help craft things to say and how to do it. We can do the trainers kind of deal, so that you're armed with either an elevator pitch going on the radio, on Saturday morning to talk to the public affairs program in your area, or, whatever. It's possible. It's possible. As long as we can get the small group together first, we go bigger from there.
And I'm not necessarily thinking so much as the bigger as I am thinking about communities that are very disenfranchised to begin with. Sometimes I'm trying to understand how we can get into those communities to get pockets of people to understand the importance of what we're asked. What we really need to do is to have them have a voice about where they're living at, and what are those issues. They have to see it as an issue first. So
what I would do first is I would start talking to organizations that serve those communities. Like the Texas Organizing Project is in Dallas. They may not be as far as Collin, but they're in Dallas, and they're membership based. And the members have to decide whether they want to talk to you. Workers Defense Project deals with construction workers, many of whom don't have papers to be in this country, but serve us all and are our community members and friends. The AAPI community certainly has their own organizing groups. And so there are some, and some of those people we already are in contact with, right? JOLT is a huge organization that has 20,000 members that are all young Latino organizers all over the state. And so some of this, we're going to have to think about who's already doing work in our area and see if they have thought about redistricting, in the organization, and start talking to them about what would be appropriate to provide information to some of the communities you're talking about. It just depends on the relationships you have. Like I used to work in social services 1 million years ago. I'm sorry I didn't put that on that very long resume, but and one of the
something off.
I did. One of the things I used to do is I went to DHS offices and I rode the bus, and I passed out flyers because I wanted people to get their GED in the program that I worked for, because it was free. So you got to go where people are, but you can't do that uninvited.
Exactly.
Because you have to, respect, you got to meet people where they're at, right? Right. So we can get creative about that. I'm not worried about that because I feel like, look, there's 43 people in this group. Y'all know people. You are involved already. So with a little bit of research and thought, we can very respectfully take this message into places that it's never been before.
Perfect. Well, I know we are running short on time, but I know we had a bunch of questions in the chat. So I want to group those, Ramona, if I can.
Sure.
Perfect. All right. And we also have Lola who has her hand up, but a couple of these, Jen, I think are quick hits for you. So let's just knock those out really quick. Ramesh had a question about litigation. And the question was really about trying to understand having to scroll back up. All right, the impact of the Supreme Court, what that may have since it's a 6-3 split on any gains or headwinds that we might make here locally with our redistricting. Do we anticipate it even elevating to that level?
Yes, of course. Let me just say, Ramesh, that HR 1, the passage of HR 1, which is in Congress now, is going to be really important to Fairmounts in this country, as is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Those two things have got to pass through Congress or we're going to really, really be up against it. You're not wrong to point that out. It doesn't mean we can't overcome it. I think about, when I start thinking about the Supreme Court, I think about Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass gave this huge speech after Plessy versus Ferguson, where they said, anyway, they get a huge hit on ending slavery. And Frederick Douglass is asked to give this speech like, is there any hope? And there is. And one of the things I always remember him saying in that speech is Goliath didn't know he was going to fall until he did. So, do I think they have our best interest in mind and care about Black and brown communities? No. But do we, what are you going to do?
Got to keep fighting,
Yep.
All right, so someone had a comment in here about Rick Perry used to be a Democrat and he changed to be Republican, okay. And then Ramesh also had a question about the storm and whether or not we should mention that in this, if we choose to testify in the Senate hearings. And I know, Jen, you had mentioned in another meeting earlier this week about their storm hearings specifically, so.
Yeah, in fact, the extension, and I'll throw this link in the links, the stuff I'm gonna send you, they're doing hearings on that damn storm right now. And they extended the time that you can testify about the storm until Monday at noon. You can tell them your story, and I would recommend you do it. But I don't think there's any reason that you shouldn't put it in your redistricting testimony, because the only reason that Texas has its own electric grid that's not connected to the rest of the United States and chose not to winterize after 2011 when we had the same problem is because a whole bunch of the people on that committee voted not to do it. So put it in your redistricting testimony, you bet.
Perfect. There is two questions, one about the recording and one about the slides. And I know, Ramona, we are gonna record this, but Jen, the slides, I didn't know if that was something specific you wanted to answer and address as it relates to all on the line.
No, I can send you the slides. Is that the question? I don't mind doing that. The other thing I'm trying to do, and before is going to be very busy, he hasn't even gotten trained for this job. Like that doesn't even happen till next week. This poor guy. Anyway, one of the things I've asked him to do is we need to get all of the trainings we've done up to now that we have recorded in a place where people can get them, whether they can come to this or that meeting, so that say you missed the deep dive training. If Ramesh, I bet you would be interested, I go into the legal history of redistricting in Texas at some length, but I'm probably not going to do that training again anytime soon, at least not for another month or so. So we're trying to get everything in one place so that you can get access to what we already have done. And that as we add more things, you have access to them and you can send them to other people too.
And Jen, that's really important because the emails are overload.
I
We're
know.
email overload, not just from, I'm just saying from everyone. We're just trying to stay connected. But I think that's something to really, for all of us to consider moving forward, is just how can we condense and put things together so we have one place that we can go and look. I don't know how maybe we can talk about that at another time, but it is something that we do need to look at.
Because it's all over the place and it does.
It really is.
I know, and it needs to be way more, it needs to be easy to access no matter where you are. Look, I mean, if I'm being honest, it needs to be in more than one language. I don't even know how I'm going to get
Exactly. And we need to we have some work to do. So, again, it's after 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, before we wrap, we have 2 last questions really quick. And then Ramona, I know there's Lola who has her hand raised. That might be the last question that we have tonight.
Absolutely.
So Jen, you had mentioned Senate hearings. Someone asked about the House redistricting hearings. And then also someone asked about where to sign the pledge that you mentioned earlier.
Okay, you sign the pledge at allontheline.org. It's on there. And then the House was having hearings before COVID. One of the last things I did before lockdown was go to a redistricting meeting, actually, I think in North Texas, in Arlington. It was sleeting. That's what I remember. So they stopped having hearings and have not started back up. And I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do, but I will pass it along to you when I do know. But you can look at their, like, that Texas legislative site. Todd Hunter is the chair of the committee. Guys, they have committee chairs. They have people you can call, and that's kind of why I want to start smaller and more regular meetings.
Yes.
This is really hard to cover in an hour, but you
It
can call those people up. Say, when are you doing hearings? Why aren't you?
Okay. So did we get our last question, Sheena?
Actually, Lola, yeah.
Lola, where's Lola?
She's right. Oh, there she is.
Hi there. Good
Hi.
evening. I just wanted to, actually what I had was a comment. I live in Little Elm, Texas, and basically North Texas. And I wanted to ask, is there anything that I could have done? I initially made my request to apply for the mayor position here in Little Elm. And then I went to the library after everybody contacted me regarding the Democratic Party here in the North area, basically telling me who they were going to help assist, which is a Democrat, for him to run. They were like, but we would love for you to run for the board. And I said, no, not a problem. So I went and I went to try to withdraw my application for mayor here in Little Elm. And the lady was not available. The secretary wasn't available. Then I called her and told her what I was trying to do, trying to submit my form, for the May 5th or the May 1st elections. And she basically said, oh, I don't, you don't need to do anything. I said, well, I'm on my way to sign up for the board. And so I went, and then I said, well, I'm here and it's 4:15 and you close at 4:30 and you're not here and it's February 12th and I need to get everything submitted. So I run and she was like, oh no, you don't need to do anything. So I go and I go apply for the board. And, I called her again. I said, I just want to find out. I applied for the board and I know I need to submit this form. She said, just send me an email. You'll be fine. Not a problem. So I sent her an email and I had another gentleman on the call. His name is Jordan Villarreal, who's extreme Democrat over here in the North Texas area. But long story short, I'm not in the ballot. I'm not on either ballot. And I made a fuss about it. And I called, so the pre-mayor, who's supposed to be the mayor here in Little Elm, I called him and I said, is there anything that I can do? Because he contacted me as soon as I put my vote in, because I'm like, there is a huge Latino community here in Little Elm that is underrepresented. I have a business called Ask Lola Paralegal Services. And what my business does is I basically assist my community in filling out documentations, DACA, college applications for all the Hispanic parties who don't understand, they have their kids interpreting and stuff like that. So it was funny because when I submitted my request, he was like, how do I not know you? How do I not know who you are? But you've got 5,100 friends on Facebook and 12,000 followers on Instagram. And I said, well, that's because I live in my community. Like, I live in Little Elm. It's called Preston on the Lake. I can afford to live in one of the HOAs off of Frisco and Lebanon and, the nice communities here. But I chose myself to live in one of these trailers because I wanted to get in touch with the community. I wanted to know what is going on because this whole caging of the kids and everything really, really affected me. I'm born and raised from in El Paso. So long story short, I was really, really upset. I go over there, I make my application at 5:15 for the school board. I knew she was wrong because I read what was needed. The secretary contacts me. That was Thursday. She contacts me on Friday. Now, mind you, we had the storm. And then she says, oh, can you come by the library from 10 to 3? I need you to fill out this document. I said, I know there was a document, but I can't go. I've got 3 kids. I'm here at the house. And I don't have a car. And then so she said, not a problem. I'll go to your house. So I said, okay. She came to the house. I signed the form. She takes it. And it's still, she told me that the mayor application didn't have to be withdrawn until the 19th of February. She was like, oh, don't worry about it. All this stuff. Long story short, I'm not on the ballot. I was unable to get on the ballot. The person that I was running against or wanted to run against is in place 5, and he has absolutely nobody running against him. He's a Republican. And I got an email from the secretary of Little Elm School Board telling me that my application was invalid, even though, and then I CC'd the secretary and I said, I was there. You were not there. I asked and I was there at the library. You weren't there to perform your job. And you need to explain this to the Secretary of State so my entry can be made. And they basically told me that it was not their responsibility. It was, it was the Secretary of State. I called the Secretary of State and made a complaint. And they basically told me that neither here nor there, I couldn't be on the ballot because I wasn't withdrawn on time. And I said,
Right, for the purposes of time, this is definitely an
Thank
offline
you. We need to
conversation.
shift. Yeah.
Hey, but Lola,
However, we can definitely connect you with the right people. So
Lola,
yes,
I've got a couple of people that I want to put you in touch with.
yes, good.
Would you mind
Thank
putting
you,
in the
Sarah.
chat? Would you mind
Totally.
putting in the chat to me personally your number, and I'll call you tomorrow?
Okay, thank you so much.
I don't know
I'm
if
sorry,
it's going
I
to
really
help,
had
but I
nothing to
know a
do with
couple
it.
of
It was
people.
just like, I want to work for people and they literally stopped me. They stopped me.
So why don't I just
Okay.
give you my, okay, do you want to give me your number?
Yeah, it's 469-506-7716.
I can't promise you can get fixed, but I know a couple of people that, like, from the Texas Civil Rights Project. There's a couple
Excellent.
of folks.
Thank you.
And then also I think you should be talking to the state party, Glenn Maxey, who's a uber mensch. He really knows those laws really, really well. So,
Glenn is officially retired, just
oh,
for the
is he?
record.
Did he finally do it? He finally retired? Well, I
I
know,
talked to him today. He is retired officially.
well, then we won't bother him. We'll bother somebody else, Lola. We'll figure it out. I don't know the answer, but we'll figure it out.
All
Thanks
right.
for sharing,
Okay.
Lola. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
And thank you for being willing to run. That is amazing.
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, Ramona.
So our meeting we've come to the point where we've talked about all of our redistricting and everything for tonight. And Genevieve, you've been such a wealth of information. We're definitely excited about connecting with you again and learning how to drill down this thing so that we can be as productive and helpful as we possibly can in making our voices heard. So again, thank you for your time. You're always on point. You're always excellent. You got to come down to Austin when we're able to visit again, get out again, right?
Hey. Yep, come on over. Well, I got a
So-
big backyard, so we'll have a barbecue or something.
There you
well
go. And
lady.
listen to some of that free verse that you do. I'm so impressed. Poetry. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your evening to attend this meeting. And I do just want to pause for a second because we are all so very fortunate to have been sustained through this last week in the state of Texas. And so we can just have a moment of silence to just for gratitude purposes because we have so much to be thankful for. And I'm very thankful for each one of you. And I do look forward to working with each one of you. And I look forward to learning more about how we can be a help to our communities that we live in. So thank you. So one moment and then we'll dismiss and we'll look forward to hearing from Genevieve again, Jen again, and when we can meet again to collaborate. Thank you. One
All
moment
right,
of
y'all have
silence.
a good night. Bye-bye. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.